Can you describe how digitally connected retail is in China? And what does that mean then for brands and retailers?
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I like to share the video, because when we talk about digital retail in China, most people don't get to see what we're doing. Our service is 100% app-based, so people have the app installed on their phone in China. It's 100% mobile, and it is 100% in Chinese, and being in an app, it's very difficult to get it translated. So most people that we talk to aren't spending a lot of time interacting with the platform. But what's really important about China as a market already last year, certainly accelerated by the pandemic, e-commerce represented more than 50% of retail sales in China, of all retail sales. So what does this mean? This means that our consumers in China, the consumers that our luxury brands and fashion brands from Europe and the United States are reaching out to, are used to interacting first and foremost through their app and in a fully digital manner. So you saw in the video that we launched Luxury Pavilion in 2017. So since 2017, we've really been building the tools that allow the brands to connect directly to the consumers. One last thing that makes us very different from what we're used to seeing in the West is that we are 100% a marketplace. What does this mean? It means that the brands use our tools to create their own experience for the consumers. If you saw in the video, the AR, the VR, all of these different experiences were 100% brand-based, and it's the brands that develop their content and connect directly with the consumer. The consumer buys from the brand, they don't buy from Tmall, and they receive their package directly from the brand and not from Tmall. So it's a very different environment from what we're used to seeing in the West.
Absolutely. So much, genuinely, so many questions I want to ask, but let's stick to what we've got here for now. What do you see as the opportunities in China today for global brands and retailers? Because it's not an easy market to navigate.
It's not an easy market to navigate. It's very far away, and they have very different expectations for digital and for their market. And I think over the last year and a half, what we've seen is this market has become increasingly more important for our luxury and fashion brands, mostly because Chinese consumers are no longer traveling. So all of their consumption is happening directly in China. So it's become imperative really for brands to reach out to their consumers in China directly. So maybe, we just had Fashion Week last week in Milan. And this used to be a time when many influencers and KOLs and consumers could come to Europe or New York or wherever they wanted to be and interact and learn about brand heritage, brand storytelling, and all of these fantastic things that the brands were doing. Well, consumers can't travel that way anymore. They can't come into stores the same way anymore. So interacting through the digital channel has become even more important for the brands.
And do you think, so this is completely sort of loose guess, really, anecdata, I think they call it more than anything else. People tend to replicate what they see in that sort of sense. And it strikes me when I've seen all the videos about the Amazon, Go stores and all these sorts of things, that actually what it's about is it's very much about reducing the friction of the till, of that bit. It's about making it easier to go in and come out. When I watched that video there from Tmall, or we saw another event the other week with a 10-cent store and all this sort of stuff, they feel far more playful. It's more about the holistic experience of shopping. It's making shopping fun. It's all that sort of stuff, rather than it just being about convenience, quick, let's go in, let's get out, all that sort of stuff. Do you think that there is a cultural difference between the way these things have been explored in China versus in the West?
It's definitely different. I don't know if that is the technology driving the usage or the culture driving the technology. But at this point, it almost doesn't matter anymore. It's very true that our platform and in China, the platforms are very much about discovery. It's very much about playing and interacting. When we talk about live streaming, it's very much about interacting with the other people that are watching the live streaming at the same time that I am, and the presenter that's presenting the products. So it's very interactive. It's very, like you said, playful. If we look at the pages and the designs and the images and just the number of pictures that describe a product, the short videos that are explaining brand heritage and all these kind of things, we don't see that. Usually, I'm in Italy. I shop on Amazon all the time because I can't shop on Tmall in Europe right now anyway. And I love Amazon, but it's a very different experience. I go there because I know that I need something. I know that I want to buy something. I don't go there to hang out and see what's new in the market. In China, people come to our app usually 7 times a day and they spend more than half an hour. So it's really about just coming to see what's new. Newness is one of the key drivers for people coming onto the app and looking for things. So this then creates an entirely new channel and way of interacting for brands to show their products to the right consumers.
Mm. And that whole phrase, you can't be it if you can't see it. I suppose that's my sort of, the bit I'm kind of, trying to play around the edges of is, if what you see is Amazon, and Amazon is such a roaring success, do you then try and replicate that? Whereas if what you see is this more playful approach, do you then start to get far more, iterations around playfulness and all that sort of stuff? So, potentially seeing these videos, doing these sort of things could have a real sort of effect. What is the state of luxury and fashion in China right now? How do you think the pandemic changed or accelerated consumer behavior?
I think that what I mentioned before about those Chinese consumers being in China and having to interact completely in China with their luxury brands has made the brands much more attentive to bringing that content. We saw during, I just mentioned Fashion Week in Milan, some of the fashion brands had a live event that was live in Milan and Shanghai at the same time. So it's really about bringing the story and the products directly into China. And what we've noticed with Chinese consumers, just quickly to mention the pandemic, which is already past for us, it's history, although it's still impacting many aspects of our business. But as far as people's habits around shopping, what we saw is that people have moved their habits online even more than before. And in China, stores were only closed for about 2 months, and they've basically been open, with spot closures for the last, year, over a year. But what did we see? We saw that even once stores opened, people still inform their purchases online, which of course they also did before the pandemic, but it's just really accelerated that need and interaction that happens digital before people come into stores. So what did people see in China? When people went back to stores, they spent less time physically in a store, but they spent more money because they had basically prepared what they wanted and looked for and were able to go and get it in a store. Because of course, we all love to go shopping, right? I mean, as much as we are the biggest player of digital commerce, we believe very strongly in the joy and the fun of physical retail. Alibaba, a few people know, actually has an entire chain of department stores in China, where we're also able to, test out our technology and see what's working and what is really resonating with our consumers. And then we help brands use that same kind of technology as we roll it out more widely.
And we're talking about, the kind of new phrases seem to come up all the time. We're talking at the moment about the new retail. And I'm wondering what's the difference, do you think, between the new retail and between omnichannel?
This is an interesting question. We started speaking about new retail a few years ago on Alibaba. And for us, what's the difference? Omnichannel is I want to talk to my consumer through many different channels and kind of try and sell them show them the same story and the same experience through these different channels. So people can come in from any channel and have the same experience with my brand. But when we talk about new retail, we're talking about something different. We talk about that's the consumer. Omnichannel is almost the consumer-facing side, let's put it that way, of how brands interact. But when we look at the impact that technology is having on retail and brands at the moment, it isn't only about how we reach out to our consumers. It's about how we do our merchandise planning, how we use logistics to plan the right product at the right place at the right time. It's really new retail is about embedding technologies through all the layers of my business in retail and the way I connect with my consumers. So not only about a marketing aspect, but also how do I do customer care? How do I provide after-sales services? How do I, maximize my logistics? China is a very big country. How do I allocate my merchandise so that I have the products that people want as close as possible to the end consumer? So using data and intelligence to help me organize all aspects of the retail journey.
Fantastic stuff. And of course, I do have more questions for Christina, but this isn't about me asking questions. It is about giving you the opportunity to do the same. So please do, thinking caps on, raise your virtual hands. Our producer Jamie is watching and bring up as soon as we possibly can. What's a retail technology or trend you think then will have a significant impact on the industry moving forward, Christina?
One of the biggest things that we've seen in the last year is definitely live streaming, without a doubt. I mentioned earlier that we have our own chain of department stores. They're called In Time in China, and I'll give just a little insight into how we used live streaming there. So during the pandemic, obviously all of our stores were closed. In Hangzhou, where our headquarters are, the store it's a tourist destination. So most of the people that come there are on vacation and they're looking for certain kind of products. When the store closed down, obviously no people were coming into the store. There were no longer any tourists in that area. So what did we do? We started live streaming. So sales assistants would actually go online and start live streaming about what was available in the store. And we did this immediately, day one. And we actually did this also with many of our brands. Basically, you're never closed because we can use our technology to allow you to sell what's in store to people watching from home. But what did we learn by this? We had to reconnect with a different consumer, because the consumer that we're now buying at our Hangzhou store were local Hangzhou consumers. And I think that this is something that we'll see going forward, the importance of our local consumers. But live streaming and the way that we interact with consumers and see their feedback, I think that this will definitely continue to build and go forward. And I'm excited to see how we have that play out in Western markets. We already had all the infrastructure in place with our Tmall platform to make live streaming with e-commerce completely seamless. As you mentioned before, a lot of the things are about making it easy to buy things without any sort of friction. And we're able to do that on our live streaming platforms. So it'll be very interesting to see how that plays out in the West.
Yeah, so we had talking to somebody the other day from sort of hospitality, and they said exactly the same thing. We said, obviously it must have been horrendous. Hotel, when the pandemic happened, you couldn't. And they said, actually, yes, but the biggest change for us was realizing that when people came back, it was locals. And we'd spent so long talking to the world and so little talking to, the 10 miles outside of our front door. And that was where we had to build our relationship. So it's fascinating that's kind of affecting you as well. Looking into the crystal ball then, what do you think the future holds for the global luxury kind of retail business?
I think that we'll see an increased adoption and presence of digital as we move forward. We're all looking in luxury in particular for travel to come back, because that's a very, impactful segment for luxury retail. But I think that really what we've seen and what we like to focus on through digital, and I think brands have really done a great job with their learning curve over the last year and a half. We talk a lot about technology, but really the focus is always on how are we connecting with our consumers. So I think looking forward for luxury, there will be always that increased focus of how do I connect with my younger consumers through digital to keep them engaged with my story, with my brand, with my products, with the beautiful things that I'm making.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much indeed. We do have a question from our audience. This is Francesca, I believe, from Brunello. Hey, Francesca, how are you and what's your question?
Hi, Christina, everyone. Yes, I would like to ask Christina how she sees the role of Tmall, especially luxury pavilion, in building the customer journey when discovering a luxury brand, and how it relates to the brand's direct channels.
Helping consumers discover new products, we've seen is one of the most important ways that we can also help brands. So particularly when we're talking about luxury consumers, we say, on Tmall, we have close to 900 million consumers. 900 million consumers are not our luxury consumers, or the people that we want to put in touch with brands. And this is true for fashion, but this is also true if we're selling baby diapers, right? Not everybody of the 900 people wants baby diapers. So what's really important is the way that we allow brands to reach out and kind of we have channels where they can show new products to those people that are most interested in their categories. And this is something that we have been developing through the last year to really help brands and consumers focus on the new things that are coming into the market. Brands create new products all the time. I mean, constantly, right? Even if it's just new colorways or new forms, things like this. But we really want to help people find these newer products. So we've created special areas where we can do that. And I think as far as your question about how does this play out also with brands' own channels, I like to think about this in a very similar way to the way that brands do traditional retail, right? Brands, I'm in Milan, I think I've already mentioned. In Milan, we have the shopping streets where every single brand has a flagship store in luxury, but we also have some very famous department stores or multi-brand retailers. And many of the brands that have a flagship store are also present in these multi-brand environments. Why is that? Because when somebody comes into a multi-brand environment, maybe they're looking for a black evening bag and they don't necessarily have a brand in mind. So it's one way to communicate with our consumer. It's a different way when we're directly in a flagship environment. This is already a fan or a follower or somebody who's come into our brand looking for something specific. So these are ways that brands use these different channels offline, and they need to understand that these same channels work online. And it's a question of finding the right way to play around with those different channels to attract new consumers through multi-channel opportunities, and at the same time, provide special services to their loyal consumers, the same way that they do in their offline boutiques worldwide. So we allow different technologies for all of those steps of interacting with our consumers. Is it a new consumer or casual consumer that's come through multi-brand channels? Or is it somebody that's come straight into our flagship store? We can offer different services to these different cohorts and really adapt our services and their experience to what they're looking for.
Thank you very much indeed. Francesca, was that useful?
So much, thank you.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed, Francesca. Much appreciated. Take care. Christina, I just want to put to you, if I may, so we had a hello? Okay, we had a question earlier from somebody asking about how you make data useful, how you turn it into something that's actually kind of actionable. And I think there was an element of that to Francesca's question there as well. It's this sort of, it's getting used to this new world. And I'm wondering how, when you have to partner with all these brands, are there certain ways in which you say, look, we're going to give you this piece of information, but this is how you can use it. This is how you should be looking to use it. This is what it is telling you.
So that's actually, it's very good that you brought up this question, because I'd like to clarify something else that's very unusual about our platform. Brands have full, real-time, transparent access to all of the data around their stores. I think it's very different, like we said before, as a full marketplace, it's the brand that is running the store. So it is the brand that is serving the consumer, and the brand has full-time, real access to all of the information that they are generating on our platform. So it's not a question of us cherry-picking some information to share with them. It's not a question of us looking at their data to find out what might be the best product for us to make with our own private label, which we don't do, by the way, private labels. It's really a question of allowing brands to have real-time access to all of their data. One of the things that brands we've seen in the last few years really developing is their in-house capability to analyze this data. Because as you can imagine, if I have access to all of this data, which pieces of this data will help me develop my business in China? We can help brands with that. Not only do we give them access to all of their data directly, but we do provide some insights. And over the years, as we've been working with brands, we've seen something very interesting. We've seen a lot of people coming from fast-moving consumer goods where they have always been very attentive to how they use customer data and different data points to drive their marketing strategies. A lot of these people have been moving into luxury brands to help them understand the best way to use their available data to their advantage.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. We have Philippe from Warner Brothers now, I think. Good morning, Philippe. Good afternoon, Philippe, for you. How are you, sir? What's your question?
I'm very good, thank you. And I think that's a lovely segue into my question. Thank you. We've been working with Alibaba Group for a long time in China in particular, and you're a great partner of ours. Do you think that where you led in terms of sharing data with manufacturers, with licensors, do you think that will actually lead the way for other retailers to be more open to sharing data in the future?
I know that it's been very successful for us, and it's really helped our brands. And it's part of our philosophy. I want to go back to, we have, in Alibaba, we often talked about our values and our mission. Our mission is to make it easy to do business anywhere. Our mission is to help small and medium enterprises create business and create jobs. So when we have that as our mission and our key focus, it's very obvious to us that we need to share this data with brands to help them develop their business. I don't know what other people are going to do. It depends, I think, a lot on what their business model is or what their focus is. But we believe that as part of an ecosystem, because we do believe that we are creating an ecosystem, right? We do very few things by ourselves. We actually have an ecosystem of partners that works within the Alibaba ecosystem to help everybody. I started working in the internet 20 years ago because I think that it is an environment where it is possible to create win-win situations. And the more we share, the more we actually create business for everybody. So I would hope that we would see more people doing this around the world, although I don't know what will happen.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you, Philippe. Thank you for your question, sir. Much appreciated. Take care. And up next, I think we have Stephen from Adyen. Hey, Stephen, how are you? So what's your question?
Hi there. Sorry, I'm not from Adyen. I'm from New Black.
New Black, forgive me, sorry.
It's okay. Nice to meet you, Christina. I have a question. We work for many brands, and most of them, of course, wants to go into China. And they're all struggling. What's the best way to do that? Especially with, like you mentioned, the new retail. Of course, Alibaba can provide you with many services to sell their products and to engage with customers. But they're wondering, physical stores, own websites, consumer-facing apps, all kind of other tools and platforms like the Red Book and etc. So what would you recommend, or what do you see from a practical view would be the most successful approach for a brand in general towards new retail in China?
This is a fantastic question, because this is a question I get quite often. A lot of times talking to brands is like, how's the best way for me to go into China? And what I like to talk about with brands is, as big as Alibaba is, we are not your China strategy. We are a tool that will help you succeed in China. But in order to go into China properly, any brand in any segment of any size needs to look very carefully at the market they're going into. China is a huge consumer market with tremendous opportunities, but it's also full of local competitors that are often selling the same kind of products that are local, and local, I mean, in Italy or France or Germany, the UK, what our producers are making. So the first most important thing is to really take the time to understand the China market, what Chinese consumers are looking for, adapt your product to that local market. And then after that, we can think about, okay, which is the right channel? What's the right digital channel for me to go there? And if we do want to talk about, digital channels as opposed to new retail, obviously, you need to be physically present in China. Your products need to be physically present in China. Another number one mistake that I see from brands, unfortunately, still today, big or small as they may be, pay attention to your trademark. Make sure your trademark is registered in China, because if it's not, there's very little that you can do to place your product in the market. So sometimes that seems like such an easy first step that we forget, but I can't tell you in the last 6 years I've been working with Alibaba how many brands even brands that are very successful in the West, didn't register their trademark properly in China and end up having trouble. So really look at that China business independently of what you're going to do online. And then once you have a clear strategy, start building your social presence. And your social presence can start, you mentioned Little Red Book, WeChat, any sort of, social commerce, even if your product isn't physically ready in China. And then once you're ready to have your product ready in China, you need to move on to an e-commerce platform.
What would be a brand that we could look at as a kind of example that did it right? Would that be like Nike, or do you have another brand in mind that could guide us a bit to see what was a successful way?
It's very difficult to pick one brand because obviously if I look at Nike, fantastic example, but Nike's been in China, I think, for about 20 years, maybe more. And the first 10, they lost a ton of money. Now it's one of their biggest markets. Nike also has a very particular strategy around digital outside of China. So I think that it's very hard to give a kind of blanket answer to that one. Which brand should I look at? I would look at similar competitors, similar cohorts, and see what they're doing, and then see if there's people that are doing particularly well in China. But look at them both generally and specifically in China.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated, sir. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Christina, look, thank you very much indeed. We are coming towards the end of it now, so I suppose it's the what do people take away from this? So, kind of what do you want people to take away from this session? What are kind of the top 3 things for you to remember about this digital revitalization of the luxury industry?
Well, I love that you said it as the revitalization of the luxury industry. I like that because that's a positive spin on what's happened. So a few things. Number one, of course, digital is here to stay. But digital isn't only about how do we present ourselves, the communication that we use towards our consumers through their mobile phones or on all kinds of digital channels. Digital also is revolutionizing how we do business, including all of those kind of much less exciting back-end things like merchandise allocation, logistics, customer care, all of these things. So when we think about digital today, we need to think about its full impact on the entire chain of value for my brand, not just on how I'm communicating with my consumer. But if we want to look back at consumers and digital, I think the other thing that's really important to keep a focus on is digital. Like I said, we have 900 million consumers in China. Anybody who's working on digital outside of China, it's a humongous amount of people. But we really need to focus on our brand's core DNA and our messages that we want to bring out to our consumers around the world, and really focus on our DNA and keep telling the right story and sharing the right message across all of the channels that we're going to be using. And I think that these really are the 2 key things going forward that we need to focus on. So yes, digital is going to go across all levels of our business, but even though we're going digital, we need to keep focusing on our brand DNA and the way that we communicate with our key target audiences and the consumers that are most interested and loyal to our brand.